Breaking the gray.
Okay, Sarah, how are you?
I'm here, yes. Success. I think we can finally see each other after the tech gremlins have gone, so it's nice to see you.
Yeah, don't say it out loud, because when you say it out loud, it actually brings the tech demons into the podcast.
That's true.
Sarah, I was commenting earlier today, you're wearing yellow. That's your color. That's your power color, your light color. And also, I noticed that our guest is also wearing yellow. I am not. I have a yellow light behind me. But let's introduce our guest and jump into it.
Yeah, I'm so excited that we have Meredith from the Quantum Biology Collective today, because we talk a lot about quantum biology, but I think, a lot of people don't actually know what we're talking about when we're kind of mentioning these things. So it's great to have Meredith on. Thank you so much for joining us, Meredith. It's a real treat to have you today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm wearing a color because my 8-year-old daughter informed me that I only wear really dull, boring colors, and she wants to have a word with me about that.
You know what's funny? I had a very similar situation. I told Sarah last week that I was looking at our videos because I was cleaning up our YouTube, and I noticed that I only wear blue on every single podcast. So I'm like, I've taken my blue sweatshirts and I've hidden them from myself because it's comfort colors, like super comfort colors. But it's fall, so we're wearing the proper fall colors, and everyone looks like they're ready for throwing leaves in the air and getting ready for Thanksgiving, right? Well, yeah. Sarah doesn't know what Thanksgiving is, but we're in that time frame. So, Meredith, we've talked quantum biology recently. We've had a few guests on talking about light and photobiomodulation and setting your clock. Can you set it straight for us? What is quantum biology when it comes to this biohacking world? How do we simplify this for everyone?
So it's a really good question. And I think for me, the term, there was no term to use, right? It was like circadian biology. It was this, it was that. And so in my work at a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to pick something that covers all the bases. And that's going to be the term. We're going to hashtag the crap out of quantum biology so that it can take on meaning. Because you're right, it doesn't really have a meaning if you don't know, if it just sounds good, but you don't really know what you're talking about. So the reason we chose those words is because what it came down to for me is that all of this biohacking can be explained by the scientific discovery that quantum mechanical processes happen inside living systems, inside biological systems. And up until very, very recently, quantum physicists, classically trained ones, would have told you that that is not true, that it's not that it's totally impossible. And it was in the 2000s, the guys who wrote The Coming Age of Quantum Biology, which is a book about their work. There was a biologist called Joe McFadden, I believe. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah,
and he started having a conversation, I think, at a conference or something with a quantum physicist. And they came up with this radical, crazy idea of what would happen if they worked together to see if their respective fields could solve each other's unsolvable questions. And I say radical because in the academic world, nobody does that, right? Like you're in your silo, your PhD silo, and you don't leave it because then you wouldn't be an expert anymore. So my understanding is that they broke all the rules by doing this, but they ended up by studying the mechanism that happens inside of birds when they migrate. They ended up proving that, in fact, quantum mechanical processes can happen in warm, wet environments. And this was it's still, most physicists still don't even know or believe that that's true. It's a huge, huge, huge game changer.
For sure. Yeah. And it's very interesting because, like you say, it's something that is intuitively, it's difficult to get your head around because we kind of live in these bodies where we kind of do things on a macro level. So to try and get your head around stuff that's going on at this kind of subatomic level is very difficult for people. And so I think the word quantum sometimes is just thrown out there. And, a lot of people have kind of jumped on that, and you have all kinds of quantum healing and, you have all kinds of things which maybe kind of take away from the fact that it is directly related to quantum physics in biology. And then if you then have that recognized, you have that realization that these quantum processes are going on in biology, then you have to change the way you look at biology, really. And I think that's what your group is all about. It's helping people make that switch from thinking about things from a biochemical point of view to thinking about things from a more biophysics point of view. But I wonder, Meredith, how did you kind of get into that in the first place? What was your journey into quantum biology?
I came to it the way most people I've spoken to on the topic came to it, which was through a personal health issue for myself and one of my children. And I had chronic fatigue. And for years, I didn't really even know what that was. And then I sort of started, to get a grip on it. And there was no medical answer, right? Like I was in that group of people who was suffering in terms of my quality of life, but I would go to the doctor and they'd run their labs and they'd be like, your labs are fine, you're fine. You have kids, you're tired. And I knew it was different, right? Like, because the thing about being tired due to sleep deprivation is that the problem is solved with sleep.
Yes.
When you have chronic fatigue or fatigue as a symptom of anything else, the problem is not solved with sleep. It feels different. It's like I felt, like when you go to charge in your cell phone and the phone is getting old and it only holds a charge for a few hours and it goes from 100, it drops down to 20%. Like that's how I felt in my body. I was like, there's something, my body's not working properly because I used to feel differently and now I don't. So that really started me down the journey. And I did all the things. I did food and cleanses and supplements and acupuncture, and it was all helpful and good. But it didn't solve the problem. And so I came to this out of a real, just kind of a moment of surrender because I hate micromanaging food. I have like an ADHD brain. I like big concepts, and the idea of having to like plan out meals so that 2 out of 5 people are on a ketogenic diet. Like it made me so depressed. And I'm like, I can't face the rest of my life if this is what it is. And that was all the feedback was like, oh, you must not be eating right. There must be something else to change. And I was like, I've changed so much. It's not if the food was going to work, it would work. So I had a moment where I sat down with myself and I was like, okay, self, you listen to so many podcasts, you watch so many interviews, you've read so many things. There must be some clue that you've missed because there has to be something. I truly believe there's a solution to every problem. We just need to find it and implement it. And I flashed to an interview with Dr. Jack Kruse, and I was like, oh, that guy talked about light. Maybe. And so I returned and watched that interview again, but this time from a place of like, oh my God, I've got to please have the answers, not just out of a general interest place. And it totally transformed everything. It's not like I got better overnight, but once I understood how to put myself in a healthy light environment and how to not put myself in a toxic light environment, that's when I started to notice like, oh, my body's actually getting better. Like I can feel my body starting to work properly in a way that I didn't with all of those other attempted solutions. So then it became, why doesn't everybody know about this? And that's where we are now.
Well, I think people, like you say, people kind of know that you have a circadian rhythm and, you have the information out there, but the difference is really understanding why, because I think that's, a bit of a missing link. If you don't understand why you have to, turn certain lights off, or electromagnetic fields are equivalent to light, or, what's the difference between different seasons, you're less likely to do it. And also, I listen to Dr. Jack Kruse too, but also his message, he deliberately puts out quite a lot of detail in his messages because he wants people to kind of understand it. But that can also become a barrier if you're kind of not prepared to do the work and really work through a lot of the complicated physics. So I totally get where you're coming from. And also it's an odd concept, isn't it? That you can totally change your health just by changing your light.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. I mean, and it took me a while, right? So for people who are new to it, it's like I was listening and studying this work for months before I even bought a pair of blue blocking glasses, because I was kind of like, really? Is that really going to do anything? I don't know about that, And I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago about the importance of mitigating artificial light after sunset. And she was like, well, does it affect this? I'm like, yes. Does it affect this? I'm like, yes. I'm like, whatever health question you are going to ask me, does light affect? Does the artificial light make it worse? I'm going to say yes. And she's like, oh, this isn't just like, oh, you should take a multivitamin or whatever. She's like, there's just so many little health things thrown at us that are easy to shrug off, like, oh, blue blockers, whatever. She's like, this is really serious. I'm like, yeah, it really is. And that's to your point. Like it just seems like another health thing, like, oh, you make sure you eat 19 superfoods a day or whatever. But it's not. Like, it's really, really fundamental. Like, it's, if someone discovered that their house was filled with black toxic mold, they wouldn't be like, oh, is it really that bad? Like, they would probably deal with it immediately. And that's sort of the level that we're talking about here.
Yes, you're right. And because it is a little bit less tangible, the effect, it's difficult to measure the effect of light, and it's not something right there in your face. It is easier to kind of put that on the bottom of lists of things to do. So how did you start then with changing your light environment? I mean, what was the first thing that you did? You mentioned blue blockers. Was that the first step?
No. So I was doing very, very bad things.
Right.
So my first step was to stop reading books on my iPad before bed.
Right. Okay.
Right. That's how toxic my light environment was after dark. So, and for anyone who hasn't listened to your other podcasts on that topic, like, reading off your iPad before bed with the iPad on factory settings is, you may as well be like having an espresso and a bunch of toxic mold and then trying to get a good night's sleep. Like, it's really bad. So my first step was just actually mitigating some of the most egregious light transgressions that I found in my daily routines, right? And it's interesting because I had actually been starting to feel better. And then this app came out that was like, oh, we have like an entire library and bookstore in one app on your iPad. And I'm such a book person that I was like, oh, that's fantastic. So I switched from paper books to the iPad. And then I was like, oh, I'm feeling worse again, but I didn't know to connect those things until I started to do into the research. So yeah, so really just even like watching television is a little bit less bad than like staring at a phone or an iPad, having it right up close to your face. So that was my first thing. And then I moved on to the blue blockers. And then my husband started to get involved and we moved on to our lighting environment to keep our house a little and make sure that there were no bright LEDs on after sunset and that kind of thing.
Have you changed the bulbs in your house to be amber bulbs? And
so, yeah, so we didn't change all of them because, I don't know about the UK, but here it's like the ceiling is just recessed LED lights. So we just don't turn those on.
Right.
Really hardly ever. But if we do turn them on, it's only during the day. And then we have lamps strategically placed in high traffic areas with incandescent bulbs. And we turn those on in the evening. And then in the bedroom right before sleep, we have red light bulbs.
Oh, great.
So we kind of move through. It goes to like a brighter orangey glow. And then the closer we get to bedtime, the less light. We move more towards like just the full red light bulbs right before sleep.
So how quick was it for you to start to see results from actually changing just that simple thing, your kind of nighttime routine with the light?
It made a really big difference. So I can't say that the light alone, was like, oh, I changed all my light bulbs and I got better right away. But it did make a pretty big difference. And I think the research is that you can reset your circadian rhythms within 3 days, right? So within 3 days, you can have your system working the way that it's supposed to. If you get up, look at the sunlight, mitigate artificial light after sunset, our bodies readapt very quickly. Now, to heal at a mitochondrial level, that took longer. And I did end up, radically changing my environment for a year in order to facilitate that, and worked with a doctor who has studied quantum biology, and we worked through some protocols. And I did end up, using supplements again on a short-term basis to correct some imbalances, and, checking in with that person, with that doctor, like over a period of time. So it was probably about a year that it took once I started to take it really seriously. But yeah, but there were immediate benefits. Yeah.
Meredith, I have a question for you about light and being a mother, and I'm also a parent. How do you address children with light? And do you do anything differently now that you know? What are you doing with your kids and kind of managing their light?
Yeah, so I definitely have we have a lot of guidelines. No, they're not guidelines. They're rules. We have rules around that.
Yeah. Guidelines are for adults. Rules are for kids.
And yeah, I will say up front, it's definitely easier the younger your children are, because they're just like, oh, I put on orange glasses when I watch an iPad. That's just how things are. And once they've gotten used to something else, it's a little trickier. So I do know people who are very, very deep into this, who have like a very low tech home environment. We do not. We have I'd say like a pretty normal technology environment. My teenagers have phones. My younger one has an iPad that she can use on the weekends. And so the big one for the kids is the blue blockers after sunset. So my daughter tries to get out of it. There are ways you can make your iPhone red. If you go into settings, you can sort of do that, which really helps. So she tries to get out of the blue blockers by doing that to her phone. But, we have a big basket by the TV filled with orange glasses. And anytime anyone is going to watch TV or go on a screen after the sun has set, they have to take a pair. So we have broken pairs all over the house. We have pairs with one arm. We have pairs with missing lenses, because the kids do ride them hard. But I would say for teenagers and children, that's the biggest thing. And then I do go into the settings on the iPad and make sure the brightness is turned way down. There's never, even during the day, you don't need it up as high as the factory settings on those things. So lowering the brightness and wearing blue blockers in conjunction that's what I do with the kids. And, they don't love it, but I'm like, well, would you rather play Fortnite with orange glasses or not play Fortnite?
Yeah,
that's the choice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the option.
I put them on.
And what about getting them up? Do you kind of all try and see the sunrise?
So I go into their bedrooms and open their windows. Getting them outside at sunrise is a battle I have not taken on. So on my way down to go outside at sunrise, I go into their rooms and crack their windows. And then they do know that whenever they do get up, they have to go outside for a few minutes as their first thing. And I always have the windows open, and it's starting to get cold, and everyone's like, it's freezing in here. And I'm like, I know, but the sun.
Yeah. Well, a little bit of cold exposure is also probably not going to do much harm to.
Exactly.
That's brilliant.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. So then after you kind of took care of your own health, you decided to set up a group to help educate people in quantum biology.
Yeah, so I started reading about this stuff, I don't know, like 2018. And I just kept thinking, any minute now, there's going to be articles and the floodgates are going to open and everyone's going to be talking about this, and like nothing. And then there was one article in Outside magazine in 2019 called "Is Sunscreen the New Margarine?" I don't know if you saw that. It was a fabulous, right? It was this journalist did some digging into, like maybe the sun is not as bad as we think it is, and maybe it actually matters to be outside. And it was great. And I was like, oh, now the floodgates are going to open, because that ended up being the most downloaded article in the history of Outside magazine, was this article on "Is Sunscreen the New Margarine?" And again, nothing. And like Dr. Cruz's work is out there. He's got all these talks, clearly outlining the science. But the thing is that when you're not a scientist, it's difficult to really be able to trust be like, well, if like everything he's saying seems true. And I talk to other scientists who in his circle who say these things are true. But if they were true, why wouldn't anyone be talking about it. And it took me a while to really trust, just because of the way that our systems are set up, new information, especially if there's no profit motive, doesn't get disseminated. Like it just doesn't. Yeah. So it took me a few years to really, really understand that. And once I did, I was like, well, then we're going to do it. Let's just do it. We have the internet. You guys are doing the same thing with Rebel Scientists. Like, we don't need to wait anymore for knowledge to become institutionally driven. We can just start sharing it. So that's what we did. And what it has become is we now offer like a certification course in quantum biology for health professionals. And we actually just got approved this week to be continuing education provider for the American Naturopathic Medical Board. So that's pretty exciting. We're excited.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we're trying to it's great. Like to professionalize this and make it a legitimate and sought after expertise across the board for anyone who deals with people who aren't feeling well in any capacity.
That's great. And I wonder, out of all the people you've got, because you've got a lot of excellent experts who are actually doing the course and providing content, who kind of stands out for you? Is there something that you kind of didn't know before? Because obviously you're learning as you get on all these experts yourself too. Is there something that stands out for you as kind of something you didn't know and you're glad you discovered?
So there's a couple things. I mean, one thing we were talking about earlier is like just how all-encompassing this paradigm shift is, right? Like it's really a completely different way to understand humans and animals, like living systems. Like it's, and I didn't, I had to talk to person after person after person to really appreciate like, oh, this is a departure, right? Like this is doing to biology what quantum physics did to physics, whatever it was, like 100 years ago, where everyone is like, oh God, everything we thought was true, everything we thought was the full story is not at all. Like it's like we've been operating in like, I don't want to say wrong, but we've been operating in a very incomplete system. And I didn't fully appreciate that at the beginning. I was like, oh, light is important. But what it's taken me years to understand is just like, oh my God, this has implications across the board for everything all the time.
Yeah, I'm finding it the same because I have qualifications in various science topics, but what I'm learning now through the likes of your collective and Dr. Jack Cruz and a lot of other people who have now started, actually, there is a lot of quantum biology coming through academia, is exactly that. Everything has to be corrected now for this new knowledge that's coming in. And that's why I think light's so exciting, because it's not only the light in your environment, but the light that we're actually producing. There's a lot. All of these things are actually very revolutionary topics. So it is quite amazing to sort of be at the forefront of that, like you say, and yet not kind of be as it used to be. It used to be filtering down from academia. Now I feel like it is more of a rebel movement. People are kind of working this out and disseminating it. So that is super cool. Let's talk a bit practically. I know you've talked about light and how you then implement it for your kids. So maybe talk us through, kind of how you would coach someone who's just starting off in this quantum, like actually implementing it on themselves.
Yeah. So I guess it depends how much they want to understand in terms of the science. But if you just say that someone has accepted, like, okay, I now accept that my light environment and where I put my body and not just what I put in my body are equally important. Right. So light is as important as food. So let's say if somebody has accepted that to be true and they're ready to go, I think the simplest way to think about it is similarly to how we think about food, which is you want to like minimize the junk and maximize the densest nutrients, the food with the most nutrients and the most value. So in the case of light, that would be maximizing outdoor light exposure, even if it's cloudy, even if it's cold, even if it's raining. The light frequencies that are happening outside are giving our body all the information, telling us what to do, feeding us on many, many different levels. And most man-made light, unless you specifically buy a specialized therapeutic device or bulb, most man-made light is junk, like the junk food. It's like, okay, so what choices can I make to maximize being outside? So sometimes like if I have a phone call to make, I'll like just go do it outside, open windows, all the things, right? Like, so it's just orienting the thinking around what can I do to get my eyeballs and my skin exposed to the outside as much as possible in any given day. So you work in a hospital or an office, it's like, instead of a smoke break, you take a sun break, right? Like you just get outside, even for a minute, even for 2 minutes, doesn't matter. And then mitigate the other stuff. So like overhead LED bulbs can just be shut off. TV, like maybe I like to watch TV at night. So you put on the blue blockers. And we're just more like the way you would be with sugar. It's not like I'm never eating dessert again, but we're conscious of when we choose to ingest sugar because we know that it's not really doing much for us. So that's sort of how I treat blue light. It's like I'm mindful of it and I take measures to mitigate what it's, the bad parts while still being able to like live a normal life that leverages technology.
I would love to know a trick because I've been trying this. Sarah, I've been trying this recently. I know you're not used to me being on. I get it. But I've been trying every morning now to not do the first thing, which is pick up my phone and look at it. And I have found it to be one of the hardest things to kick. I can diet, I can exercise. I cannot not pick up my phone in the morning. And I know I can move it all the way into another room, but work, things, I find that that's the first thing I do. Getting outside, seeing the sunrise and seeing that early morning light is so important. And I can tell there is definitely a difference in the way my day goes. But any tricks besides just, locking it in a safe with, all your other valuables like your passport? I don't know.
I mean, I would say to just make it as easy as possible for the first light to hit your eyeballs to be outdoor light. So if there's a window in your bedroom, if you open the window and like put your face up to the window and then check your phone, that would be better than just going to straight check your phone. I mean, I go downstairs, I go outside, I watch, I'm outside for a few minutes and then I come in and check my phone. Like it's only a matter of a couple of minutes. And I believe, Russ, I believe you could do it. I believe you could do it 3 minutes later. I believe in you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, but the other part is Sarah has this similar problem. I mean, we all do, but like it's fall, winter time. We're getting up and the sun's not up yet. And like, do I go upstairs and turn the lights on and have a cup of coffee, or do I wait in bed until the sun comes up? I imagine in some areas of the world, that's probably not possible. I probably need some red light in the morning, but morning red light is so important. I just find that like the morning routine is not geared for getting outside and seeing the sunrise because, I'm up before the sun now too. So Sarah, what do you do in the morning? How do you resolve that morning red light?
I go out and look at the sky, even if it is still a bit dark. I kind of get up and I'm at least outside. And so I think that I'm exposing my body to the actual environment. So I'm getting that information. And I turn the lights on low. And you're right, I do have loads and loads of red lights. I'm going to send you one, Russ, so you've got a little panel. But I do have just like a little pad, just a little portable pad. But really, you're right. It's for me, it's harder in winter than summer because in summer, I have to get up early, which is an effort, but you can do it. But in winter, like having to delay your day, because here it can be dark at, even at 9:30 a.m. And of course, your day's started. But so I do get out and and I say the same, I'm here with my family and that, at least just get out and stand on the ground, even if it is still dark outside, because you're getting the electrons from the ground. You're telling your body where you are in time and space, if possible, when the sun does eventually come up, stick your head out the window. My
wife does think I'm cuckoo lately because I've been going outside barefoot early morning and just standing in the dirt. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm getting the light. I'm building my frequency. I'm grounding myself. So it's super. Meredith, I do have a question, and I saw that I was in and out. I'm so sorry. My connection was bad this morning. But I would like to talk a little bit just about diet too, and about things that you've incorporated in some of your coaching around sort of like how do you balance that as well? Like are you a believer in intermittent fasting? Do you believe that there's sort of this, like your circadian rhythm is important as well? Or are there things on the diet side that you also encourage?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to food, the big change that I made when I started to understand circadian biology was not as much what I was eating, but when I was eating. We were doing the light stuff for a while and we felt a lot better. And then we realized like, oh, we haven't been paying attention to the fact that food is also a circadian signal to the body. And so this is where the Sachin Panda book is really good. I think he talks a lot about it. So the biggest change that we made in terms of food and circadian rhythm is eating dinner earlier. So we try to eat, so the ideal is to not have eaten any food at all 3 to 4 hours before sleep. And also the ideal is to not eat once it's dark. So in the winter, that means dinner or supper, wherever you live, whatever you call it, is early. And that is something that I really notice how I feel the next morning, because I don't always do it. Sometimes, life is life and you end up eating later than you want to, or you go out for dinner with friends or something. And I think this is a really great, kind of challenge for somebody to just try eating dinner at 4:30 in the afternoon or 5 and see how you feel the next morning compared to when you eat dinner later. Because I was really surprised. The light was a very gradual, I just feel better and better. And I have more energy. But that eating dinner early thing, I woke up the next day and I was like, oh my God, I feel so different. I feel so good. So yeah. And that is, I think would be called intermittent fasting because you're shrinking your window of when you're eating.
It's going to change the dating game for sure. Yeah. I think going out to dinner on a first date, it's where do you want to go? Can we go at 4 or 5 o'clock? Does that work for you? I know. I think we all three would be really irritating to date. Right. But someone has to understand that too. Maybe I've never used the dating apps, but you put on there, listen, on my profile, I eat dinner before 5 o'clock. I'm so sorry. Deal with it.
Totally.
For me, the idea of really respecting the night and respecting that time period is so important to just know, yes, dim those lights, get those blue blocking shades on you. So super important. So it's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, Russ, is that was something else that I really learned was how important darkness is, right? So our light environment really matters, but the quality of our darkness matters just as much. So I was, quite surprised that any tiny little ambient light, coming in a crack around the curtain or anything like that, it can just, can have an effect on the quality of sleep we're getting. And that pure, deep darkness where you can't even see your hand if you hold it up in front of your face. So restorative and is also a circadian signal, which, it works in balance with the light signal.
I think we need a new hashtag, and it's just going to be normalized darkness. As a kid, you have a nightlight on, you're so scared of the dark, but actually we need to normalize darkness and make it okay. Darkness is okay. That might be our next movement.
It's more like the little LEDs that people don't even notice that they have in their rooms. Everything has a little LED, even charging points, they have a little LED to tell you whether it's on. Toothbrush chargers, everything like that, that they're the little things that you just think, oh, that's okay, it's only a little light. But what you're saying is they're the things that need to go. And I think you're right. It's understanding how important that is to kind of incentivize you to do it. I tape all mine up, all the little LEDs, if I have to have them.
Yeah, same. I
put black tape on.
And once you start noticing, there's so many. I'm like, oh, the thermostat has the fire alarm has one. Oh, the light everything. Yeah, the toothbrush, everything.
We have a lot, we are at risk for a lot of nighttime injuries as well. If we, that's the other problem with total darkness is getting up and tripping over your kid's toys or spraining your ankle or falling downstairs, which I tend to do. That's usually when I hurt myself is at night. So.
Yeah, you can get those little red night lights
to the back room.
Yeah, for sure. But tell us where people can actually get more information, because I think it is incredible what you've done with the Quantum Biology Collective, because there are so many great people on there who are giving out this information. And we've had some on our podcast. We had the wonderful Carrie B. Wellness, and we had Dr. Corey, and we're going to be interviewing Dr. Stillman. So maybe you can tell people where they could. Yeah, because I just think it's awesome what they're doing and getting that message out. But tell us where they can find you and your platform.
The quantumbiologycollective.org. And there is a practitioner directory on there. So if somebody's listening and listens to your podcast and they're ready to find a doctor or a health coach or a personal trainer, or just they want to work with somebody who they trust can understand this stuff and help them and support them in their habit changes, there's a practitioner directory there. Just totally free. You don't even need to put in your email. You just can search by symptom and find people who have experience helping in that. There's also a whole bunch of videos where we go over the basics of circadian biology and what that means. Yeah, you can sign up for a newsletter. We send out about once a month where we do a big roundup of all the great stuff. So we link to your podcast. We link to Rebel Scientist in that newsletter. So this is a fabulous resource as well. So that website. And then we're on all the social things at Quantum Health TV.
And I think the great thing is if you are a practitioner, you can go on to, you can actually do a course on your website where you can actually become one of the people on the directory by going through the course.
Yeah, so we offer a certification in the basics of quantum biology, which is taught by Carrie Bennett. And then we're launching in January 2023, level 2, which will have Dr. Stillman, Dr. Twyman, Dr. Catherine Clinton. Have you had her on? You should have her on. She's really good.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And Carrie will be, they'll each be teaching a module on that. And then at the end, we call it applied quantum biology because it's different from what from an academic study of it. And that the point of this course is to understand the science just enough to be able to apply it with clients and patients and to create protocols, understanding light and mitochondria and that kind of thing.
That's brilliant because I speak to a lot of people who are actually practitioners, a lot of doctors and things. I was in the States recently, and even, the big events like A4M, people are hungry for this knowledge because, it's not something that there is an actual academic course for. So to be able to provide that service is great. So that's fabulous. We'll definitely link it in to the show and try and promote it as best we can.
Fabulous. Yeah, because we wanted to make it easy. So there's only a 1 in a million doctor who's going to take, or anybody who's going to take the time to relearn all of the science they didn't learn. So I found the people who did that, and they're the ones who are now teaching it so that everyone else can just have a course that's a little easier to digest and won't take 10 years of studying and studying podcasts in the nighttime and stuff. So.
Yeah, exactly, which they shouldn't be doing anyway. So that's great. That's fabulous. Thank you so much, Meredith, for coming on. It was a real treat to have you. We'll definitely promote everything that you're doing, and hopefully we'll bump into each other again in the near future.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd love to. It was great having you on, Sarah, to do the photobiomodulation talk with our geeky membership. They loved it. It was fabulous. So thanks for doing that. Yeah. And Russ, it was a real pleasure to meet you.
When I was here, it was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and have a great Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Have a good one.
Happy Thanksgiving, even though you don't celebrate it, Sarah.
Thank you. Take care, Meredith. All the best.
Thank you for listening to the Rebel Scientist podcast. If you know someone who would benefit from the topics in this episode, share it with them. Feel free to DM us on all social media channels or email us at sarah@rebelscientist.com. We read and reply to all messages. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening on a channel that allows reviews such as iTunes, please leave us a fantastic review. We value your support. It all helps. All opinions of our guests are their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect their views of Sarah Turner or Russ Eisenman. This is not medical advice. If you have a health problem, please seek a medical professional.
The Rebel Scientist podcast is a Breaking the Gray production, hosted by Sarah Turner and Russ Eisenman. Audio production by Dave Visaya and the podcast engineers. For more information and for our biohacking shopping guide, visit rebelscientist.com. To hear more incredible Breaking the Gray production podcasts, visit breakingthegray.com. That's gray with an E. breakingthegray.com.
Breaking the gray.